everyone, I'm Cadet Johanna Western, your Professional Development Training Officer, and this is a special edition of Aircast, which is the book talk. And today we will be talking about the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Today we have Cadet Davenport. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to be here.
Alright, first question over the book Start With Why is, how did you like the book overall?
I really liked it. You know, when you read those kind of books, you get to kind of go into the head of the author and you learn what they're thinking and how they're communicating it. And the way Simon Sinek communicates his ideas is very simple and it's really easy to understand. So it was a really nice book to read because it was so simple and because it was so impactful.
I agree. There's a lot of examples, and it wasn't just straight spitting the facts like this is how you do it. You were able to apply it to your daily life. Even though a lot of the examples were business, you were still able to put it into your daily life and work with what you got there.
Yeah, I agree.
I also personally like that. I don't know about you, not a big fan of nonfiction.
Oh, me either. I'm mostly a fantasy person.
Oh, same here. So it was good to read, even though I was able to engage into it, even though it's not my cup of tea and genre. The next question is, what did you not like about the book?
I guess in terms of my own life, it's a little bit hard to take the company aspect and apply it to your own life. So, but that's not really a dislike of the book. That's just kind of a difficulty when it comes to me reading it because I don't have my own company. And also just reading a nonfiction book like that, kind of like a how-to DIY kind of thing, is a bit different for me because like you were just saying, you're mostly I read fantasy books. I like historical fiction, nonfiction, and kind of how-tos are not the typical books I read. But this one was pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. Like we just said, he had a lot of examples, but a lot of them were based off of business models and starting a business. Like the one I always think of is Apple. He literally compared Apple and Microsoft, which doesn't really apply to us in Afrotzy because it's we're not starting a business here. We're trying to lead people and help them get better at what they do. So it was definitely a weird thing. It also sometimes felt like it was redundant. It kept repeating the same information because it gave so many examples and extra stuff that wasn't really needed. I think the book could have almost been a lot shorter, even though it was only around almost 300 pages, you'd say?
Yeah, just about, the standard kind of book length.
Yeah, but I feel like at some points it could have been a lot shorter. So there's just a lot of examples in it, and I feel like it could have been cut in half and not talked about as much. So one of the main points that Simon Sinek talks about in his book was this golden circle. Could you kind of elaborate on what it was and kind of what it meant to you?
So basically the golden circle is just the three layers of kind of your model of how to either run a business or motivate people, and the core of it is your why, and that's your motivation, where is your passion stemming from, why are you beginning whatever you're beginning, whether or not that's just leadership or a company or anything else. And then the middle layer is the how, and that's just kind of your methods and your strategies and the way you're going to go about spreading your why. And then the last layer is the what, and that's just what are you actually giving out? What are you selling perhaps, or what are you teaching? In the case of Afrotzy is we're giving our cadets basic leadership skills throughout their freshman and sophomore year, and we're preparing them for field training. So that would be our what.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely applies to your GMC years. These GMC don't fully understand why we have to do customs and courtesies, what it's important. They just don't understand the why, because sometimes we forget to mention that why. So I feel like as long as we keep telling them the why, and hopefully they can understand that, and that golden circle is that principle. So I was just saying, with the customs and courtesies, why we do it, it's tradition, it's a sign of respect. How you do it is how we teach it, and then what is the actual greetings and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that circle basically tells you what to do. I also think the circle is significant with the fact that it's kind of like a bullseye, so the Y is in the red because that's what you're always trying to aim for, because it's just right there in the middle, that's what you want. It's always good to start sometimes with how you do it, but it's not your ultimate target. I think that's why he also did it as a circle the way it was, which makes it sense if you think about it.
Plus the concentric rings, something just about the design of that appeals to the eye and the mind more, and you tend to remember things like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. There was a quote in his book that I wrote down because I thought it was pretty significant. He said, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Do you agree with that statement?
Oh yeah, completely. You know, that's like the difference between something that like will make or break either your sales point or, you know, are you gonna follow this person? It's just, you know, if they communicate their why, if they're inspirational, if you know their motivations and you know them as a person, you're more than likely going to follow them more than somebody who's kind of apathetic towards you, who's not very personable, who doesn't really make an effort to get to know you. And even though maybe they have a better plan, this apathetic person, maybe, you know, they've got like a really great strategy, you're probably going to tend towards the person that you know better because you'll be more motivated to help them through it and to succeed together.
Yeah, I think about like just a simple job. You can be a leader of a flight, like you're a flight commander this semester for, which flight was it again? Echo. Obviously that's what you do, you're a flight commander. But that doesn't mean people are going to buy what you do because you're just in that position. They want to know why you're doing it and want to make sure that you're there to help them and you're more important than you're just trying to get check boxes off and making sure it's all done. You just want to make sure that they understand that why, which makes it easier for you to lead them and them to follow you.
Yeah, I agree. And it's definitely just like, it's a very big learning curve to try and communicate that. Because, you know, like the less time you've had in the program, the less you've been exposed to these whys and like, the, you know, the whole culture as a whole. But I feel like the farther you progress, the more time you spend around your peers, the upperclassmen, is the more you get like a real like sense of the environment. You start to understand the why that everybody's been talking about.
Yeah, especially for you, you're teaching these GMC the why.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you forget to mention, oh, that's why we do it
No,
sometimes?
I completely do because, you know, I've been here 3 years now and just I'm trying to teach to the best of my ability and trying to communicate everything that, you know, they need to learn, and sometimes it just doesn't occur to me to always say the why because I already know it's already intrinsic into my mind.
Yeah.
And I just like, you know, it's very easy to overlook sometimes.
Yeah.
Since we're so used to it.
Yeah, it's like one of those things you're just like, you should just know it, and you're like, wait, that's not how
No,
I was taught.
They don't know it. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help them learn.
Yeah, I feel like if they also, like you said before, if they know the why, they're more likely to stay and want to keep learning. There was another quote that I saw, certain quotes just stuck with me for some reason, but he also mentioned in chapter 9, best practices are not always the best. And do you have an example of this or elaborate on that?
Definitely. You know, we're both in the nursing profession at the moment, going through our major, and best practice is definitely a phrase that's thrown around the hospital. And like sometimes you look at that best practice and you're like, is it really? And you do a little bit of investigation. You're like, this could be fixed. Like this could be simplified. It could be like streamlined a little bit. Like maybe it's not even necessary altogether, and it's just something that's being done because it's been done.
Yeah.
And everyone's been calling it best practice because you know it works. Or maybe it's like adding a little thing, but in reality, like how much does it really add?
Yeah, exactly. One thing I thought of was, as the professional development flight commander, I worked a lot with the academic officer. For the best practice for academic hour was going to the GMC lounge and just studying. Mm-hmm. You sit on your laptop and you do it. That was considered the best practice for academic hour forever. It was not the best. Nobody really went.
It's hard to motivate people just to go and sit.
Yeah, because I mean, if I'm going to go study, I'm going to go somewhere else and do that. But that was not the best practice, so we ended up completely changing academic hour around and making it a tool to actually learn more warrior knowledge and understand what the problem was. We fixed it, and now it's like the best practice for it.
Yeah, it's definitely like a matter of perspective. Like, are you calling it best practice because it's tradition or because it's actually the best practice?
Yeah, exactly. And I think tradition is one of those things why people think it is the best practice, because it's like, oh, we've done it for this way for X amount of years that they just assume it's the best practice, which it definitely is not. It's why stuff is always evolving and changing.
Yeah, that's why research exists. That's why people look into these things.
Yeah, that's a good one with research, because everything changes after they do research on stuff. They're like, but wait, this is better now.
We gotta change everything.
Exactly. In the ring, the golden circle, would you consider yourself a how or why person?
I consider myself a why person, but I'm very introspective. Like, I like to find out like why I'm doing things. I take time at the end of the day to kind of like analyze, you know, what's been going on. Why did I react the way I did? You know, what am I like, what's the root cause of like my thinking and like how things are going? And so that's why I consider myself a why person, but probably on the outside I seem like a how person. Yeah. So it's like kind of like the difference between like, you know, what's going on internally versus what's coming out externally. So I think, you know, like finding the balance between those two, maybe projecting a little bit more why, you know, might help myself as a flight commander. But I think kind of on both, depending on whose perspective it is.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes I catch myself being a how person. One way I remember recently was when we were taught tactical casualty combat care. I started with how you do it, like you performed all this tourniquet, you apply pressure, you do all this stuff, and then I'm like, oh yeah, this is why you do it.
You gotta stem the bleeding.
You gotta stop it. It's gonna help the person live, And I catch myself somehow starting with how, and I can see how that literally is confusing sometimes. But then when I'm sitting in like classrooms and trying to understand stuff, and the teacher doesn't ask why, I'm like, well, I'm gonna make sure I tell people why we do certain things the way we do it, because I hate being left in the dark about not knowing anything.
I do agree. Like that's the thing with like some classes, they just give you information and it's loads and upon loads, and you try to memorize it, and there's nothing to connect it to. You don't have the why. You don't have the reason why you're trying to memorize this information.
Sometimes you don't even have the how, and they're just like, what you have to do. So you have to, what this is.
Here's the result, but I don't know how to get there, and I don't know why I'm getting there.
No, it's just like you're stuck with it, and you're just like, this is not useful to me, and you're not going to remember it. It's not going to be memorable. It's just an extra random fact you have, and you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, which just, goes to prove that that's why you need to start with the why, because if you start with the outer layer, there's no way to go deeper.
No, exactly, which I think is why you can always work to improve to get to that goal, kind of like it is that circle, and you're trying to aim for that target. So there's always room to improve, but it's really hard to go from what to why.
Yeah.
Can you give an example when you saw a leader that started with what?
I think the first example that comes to mind is my very first archery coach. Going into archery for the very first time, I knew nothing about it. I didn't know how to hold a bow. I didn't even know how to hold an arrow at all, or much less know which eye to close. I didn't know if I was right or left-handed. And they started with, here's how you hold the bow, here's how you draw the arrow and pull it back, and all this. And it was just a lot of things to take in at once, which is fine, when it comes to a sport like that. But as I progressed and I started learning the why behind that, it became easier to try and correct little mistakes in my form, because I knew why I was correcting it and what was going wrong with the what.
Yeah, I can feel that. Is a very similar thing with what gymnastics was. So most of the time when we did stuff, we always had a routine. We had everything we knew we had to do, and I was at. One day my coach was like, all right, you guys have to have a backwards element on your beam routine, and that's basically anything that goes backwards. Mm-hmm. And I hated going backwards. I refused to do it on the beam. I don't know why. Nothing ever really worked. She's like, okay, this is what you have to do. You need to have this in your routine. And I'm like, I don't go backwards. None of my skills involve me going backwards. She's like, oh, here's how you do it. You just go backwards. I'm like, okay, but I can't do that. So what am I supposed to do? So it just kept going back to this what and how for so long. And then she finally said why I needed it. And she's like, oh, you're going to end up losing points off your beam routine just because the composition isn't have a backwards element. And I'm like, and you couldn't have started with that? I could have found something a lot easier to do than what you were trying to make me do originally, which was really frustrating, especially because it just kept going back to how and what I had to do. Mm-hmm. But there was never a why until maybe a few practices later when I was just so frustrated. And she's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I can't do it. And she's just like, oh, well, here's why you need it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, you couldn't have told me this that first day instead of me wasting 2 or 3 of my practices standing trying to do what you wanted me to do, because I didn't understand why.
I spent 4 years holding my arm the wrong way with the bow. So I'm double jointed in the elbow, right?
Yeah.
And the way I'd hold the bow is I grip it, my elbow would rotate outwards and just continue bending up.
What?
And I didn't see it happening, obviously, because I'm aiming on the target, but everyone else saw that my arm just kind of looked like it was about to snap in half. And no one thought, hey, maybe we should fix that for her so she doesn't strain a tendon or something. And this went on for 4 years until I got my recent archery coach, and he's like, okay, we need to rotate that in because it's going to lock up your form a little bit. You're going to be more stable and all these things. And I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Why didn't anyone tell me?
Yeah, this is very important. Why can't you just tell me something and tell me the why? I need that why.
Yeah.
And then, can you give an example when you, obviously we just kind of went into that, but do you have another time when you had a leader start with why?
The most recent example I can think of that was when I had now Lieutenant Rolling as a flight commander my spring semester of freshman year. And I just remember her very first flight meeting. She started with who she was, why she was there, you know, what she's trying to achieve here, and what she's trying to do with us in that semester. And it just, you know, really stuck with me. It really made that semester great. You know, it started us off on the right foot, and it just really got the ball rolling.
Yeah. Personally, I just had a professor, which is kind of shocking because most professors just tell you what you have to do. I had my mental health professor. She told us, hey, this is why I'm setting up my class like this. You have to watch lectures outside of class because we're going to do these activities in class so you guys can get a better understanding, and I'm not lecturing at you, and you'll get more information and more knowledge and understand this information better. But she explained why her class was set up the way it was instead of us just going in. This is so dumb. Like, this makes no sense of why we're trying to learn. And I thought that was really useful and insightful, and I applaud her for that because most professors just kind of go right into the class. All right, here's what we got to do this semester. But
here's all the information I'm going to cram in your head, and I'm not going to tell you how or why. I'm just going to give it to you.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a really nice change of pace when she ended up doing that.
Definitely.
So I enjoyed it. How do you think an organization ensures that the why survives with new leadership?
I think that really depends on the leader that's already in place. Is the leader already in place a why leader? And if so, they probably know what to look for. They're probably, you know, looking at whoever is going to succeed them, you know, weighing their best options, you know, interviewing these people, talking to them on a regular basis to see, you know, what their motivation is and what they can bring to the organization after they're gone. Because, you know, chances are you don't want to continue along the same thread. You want your organization to grow and spread. And that comes with getting a new leader with a new vision.
Yeah, I kind of think of every time we have a change in Cadet Wing Commanders.
Yeah.
Because that one always changes. And they always tell us their initiatives on why they did it.
Yeah.
So I feel like you have to kind of have a vision and a goal in mind to keep. If you don't have, because then that's literally your why. So you need that purpose, cause, or belief. It can operate the way you want it to. And another thing I think that would help is continuity that we obviously do all the time.
Yeah.
Because it explains how you do your job, what to do, and why you do it.
Yeah, and it definitely like leaves room for like, you know, putting in your own element.
I agree. It's just a weird way of working at it, but it's so cool when it works. And then the final question is, do you recommend this book to others?
I mean, I definitely do. I feel like it's a quality read, especially like on the philosophy of beginning with why and then going to how and then what. Because I think, you know, like you're saying, like sometimes you forget yourself. It's our tendency to explain the what first just because that's the environment we've been exposed to our whole life. I know most of my schooling has been what. Sometimes I get the how, sometimes I get the why, but it's mostly here's what you need to know. And you just have to run with that and kind of teach yourself a little bit. So really just kind of reading the book and getting a feel for this different mindset and kind of trying to integrate it into your life would be really beneficial.
I agree. I would recommend this book, obviously, if you have time, because if you don't have time...
Then you're not going to soak it in as well.
Yeah, I personally think it has to be one of those things you just kind of read when you have some free time, but you know you don't have to stress about it.
Yeah, definitely.
I also recommend it if you can understand business a little bit better, because personally, he mentioned some business terms in there, and I don't know what any of this means.
Bring a dictionary.
Yeah, bring a dictionary if you don't know that much business. But he had these models and stuff, but like he gave examples, which was really beneficial. He explained each part of the circle, which helped a lot. But it's one of those things you kind of have to just soak it all in and actually read it. You can skim reading and like
definitely
not fully understand what you're reading. I feel like you have to be able to sit down and fully.
With something like this that's very business oriented, it takes, you know, a lot of separate thought of your own to try and apply it to your life. So, you know, you have to have the time and space and also the mindset to be prepared to kind of internalize those lessons or even take a couple of notes on it just to like reflect on it later.
Oh yeah, I think that definitely would help. But I would definitely recommend this book. It's a pretty short read, I think.
It's not very long.
No, I think I was able to read it with my busy schedule roughly around, I want to say like a week and a half or so.
That's pretty good.
I think that's probably what yours was around too.
Yeah, you know, like closer, I read kind of fast, so closer to like 4 days.
Yeah, I just did not have time, so. Yeah, I just think it's a good book to read overall. All right, thank you, Cadet Davenport, for joining us today, talking about Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. I think it was very insightful, and we had a lot of good topics discussed.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions about Start With Why, anything about the book, please reach out to me or Cadet Davenport. I know that we would be happy to continue the conversation. Okay, Aircats, remember to fly, fight, and win, and I'll catch you next time on the special edition of Aircasts.